Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cooking with Positivity. I am your host, Zykia McCoy. Here at Cooking with Positivity, we like to focus on positivity leading to success, whether that be in your business, in your love life, and your everyday decision making. Happy Thursday. I hope everybody's Thursday is off to an amazing start. It is another TBT. We are stepping into the Boss Theater in honor of Men's Month and Father's Month. We are looking at father figures in culture and media. Now, I just plucked a few of the obvious, and maybe not so obvious to everyone. But at the top of our list, we have Uncle Phil. Now, I was told that Uncle Phil does not count as a father because he's Uncle Phil. Let's be clear. He was Will's uncle, but he was, in all intents and purposes, a father. He had kids of his own. And he was a father figure to Will. He stepped up, albeit begrudgingly, a lot of the times. He stepped up for Will. He stepped into that male role model, that father figure role. So there is no way you're going to tell me that Uncle Phil is not a father. Okay? Just because he's Uncle Phil because he's Will's uncle. And uncles are father figures as well. A lot of the times, uncles are the only male role model a child has. And they can become funkles. Oh, sorry, I've heard. Don't oh, strike that from the record. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But they're father uncles. They're uncles who have stepped up to the plate where the father can't be there, isn't there, or was never there. And they assume that role. And Uncle Phil did just that. Like I said, in the beginning, very begrudgingly. Because technically he's Will's uncle by marriage. So in the beginning, he's doing his wife and her sister a big favor by taking in this nephew by marriage. But as the seasons go on, you see Uncle Philip Banks, played by James Avery, he takes a liking to Will. Oftentimes, so much that Carlton feels jealous, threatened, frustrated, confused, upset, because he wants that kind of attention from his father, or he wants that kind of bond with his father. Whereas Will, he grows from this rebellious teen to wanting the approval of Uncle Phil. You see him grow to respect Uncle Phil and love him as more than just the uncle, more than just the uncle who took him in. But as the father figure that he lacked. And with his own kids, of course, he spoiled them rotten. So, I mean, if you were Hillary, who wouldn't love to have Uncle Phil as your father? Okay? Moving on this list, we have Mr. James Evans, Sr. himself. Yes, because JJ is a junior, if you guys don't know. Now, I grew up watching reruns of this show. This is Good Times. And I always thought James was tough, man. I was like, oh, okay. But you have to not only look at the environment they lived in, but the world we live in. A lot of fathers are tough. James was, for all intents and purposes, a product of his environment. He knew if he did not keep his kids in line and protect his kids from outside elements, there was a strong possibility that they could go astray. They could get into trouble. Trouble that he couldn't bring them back from. Trouble that he couldn't protect them from. There's drugs, gangs, all kinds of things that you can get involved in. And James was a father in the household, providing and making sure his kids were in line, in the house, and in the protection of him. And I remember watching interviews and things like that later on in life, seeing how hard the actors fought for, one, James to be an actual character, because they wanted Florida to be a single mom. And she would not do it unless she had a husband. And then watching James be fought for every time. The lingo he would speak, the way he would handle things with his kids, the way he would handle events with his wife, the way he would handle family problems. All that had to be fought for because the powers that be did not understand. One, we're looking at a father in a household in a quote unquote bad neighborhood. It's already giving struggle. It's already giving hardship. But then you add the fact that this is a black father in a household where, again, this character had to be fought for. This person had to be fought for because they're not giving him the actual position because he was not supposed to be there. And he is a black father who is in the home, who is active, who is actively raising his children. And we didn't see a lot of that depicted on TV. at the time, there was always a reason why the father could not be in the home, or could not be active, or could not be there to help raise the children that they brought into this world. And as we go down this list, we'll see a shift or change a little bit. But James Evans set the standard. Yes, George Jefferson was in the home. He was taking care of his son. But they were under different circumstances. They were under different parameters. And as we move on, we're talking men in the home. Julius Rock. Now, this is the depiction of Chris Rock's father on Everybody Hates Chris. He is another one in the home raising his kids. Her man had 2 jobs, okay? He was working to make sure his family was taken care of. Chris went to a completely different school from the neighborhood school for better advantage. And where Julius lacked the emotional intelligence all the time to bond with each and every one of his kids, and on the show it looks simple, like, okay, you got 3 kids, like, just be there for this one at this moment. In reality, there are a lot of Rock kids. So I believe that the way it's written on the show is, what, 8 or 9 kids, where we only see 3. It's written from the perspective of 8 or 9 kids. And like I said, Julius had 2 jobs, sometimes 3, because he was doing whatever he had to do to provide for his children and his wife. His household was going to be taken care of, and it was going to be taken care of by him. So did that always leave a lot of time for one-on-ones or emotional connections and things like that? Not always. But what he did show them was the model for a hardworking man, to ensure that his household is taken care of, to ensure that his family wanted for nothing. And the show depicts him as very cheap, very penny pinchy. But if you have 8 or 9 children, you gotta pinch pennies where you can. You gotta, we like to budget around here. We like to stretch things around here too. So Julius, we see you. Okay. And next on our list, Carl Winslow. Now, Carl toted the line of a tough dad, but also a father in the home, because Carl was a cop, and that has his own slew of adversity and the way we see the world and things like that. So when it came to his parenting, when it came to him, disciplining his kids, especially his son, he often came from the place of, in my mind, this is my opinion, this is my thoughts, this is from my viewing and watching the show. He came from a place of cop first a lot of the times. He would ask Eddie things like, well, what were you doing in that part of town? Like, who were you with? Like, what were you? And for me, personally, as a parent, my first thing to ask my child is not what you did, but what happened and are you okay? Those are the first two things I'm asking. There were a few instances where Eddie was accosted by police, and Carl immediately jumped to the conclusion that Eddie was in the wrong. And that goes to the writers, of course, but it also puts you in that mindset, because I watched oh my goodness, what's the name of the show? Something Heights. You guys hit me up, let me know what show I'm talking about right now. But this father, also a cop, he had same setup like Carl in the beginning, 2 daughters, 1 son. Yep, Judy was real. She was not a fever dream. Okay. And they lived in a roughish neighborhood. And when his son on that show came into contact with the police, it was a similar dialogue, but I think because the son on that show was much younger, and the dynamic or the expectation on the show was to show that although he was a cop, he was a father first. I think that skewed that script a little bit. But in the same vein, he preached from the guise of a cop a lot of the times, instead of, father first. Have to take off that shield at first. Take off the shield. Make sure your kid is good. Then you can come at them with all the other questions. It's like, well, what were you doing there? Who were you with? All of that stuff. That's just my personal opinion. But Carl was a good dad. I will definitely put him on this list. Good dad, good husband, great family man. And as we move on to our last and final father, aka Pops, because he played Pops in not only Friday, but also the Wayans brothers. Now, although Pops is very similar, he is a little different. Okay? On the Wayans brothers, Pops is a business owner. He is raising two sons. And in the beginning, I know his wife was alive and well, because they would talk about him missing meetings and missing dates and, hurrying up and getting back to, his mama. But somewhere towards, one of the seasons, she kind of faded into non-existent. They didn't mention her as much, or if at all. So we can't really talk about Pops from the Wayans brothers as a husband fully, because his wife, again, was kind of non-existent. But his relationship with his sons, very close. He was a very middle of the road father. For me, he toted that line. They respected him, but they had enough fear to understand, like, Pops don't play. Whereas Craig and Friday, he had that respect-ish, but it wasn't to the same level. And Pops and Friday, again, it's different father. He has a 9-to-5. He values 9-to-5. He wants Craig to get another 9-to-5. If you haven't seen Friday, sorry, spoiler alert, Craig doesn't have a job anymore. So Pop's role in this is to get Craig back on track. Get him back to working so he can get out of his house, so he can walk around naked. His words, not mine. Okay? And you see the societal pressures through Pops in Friday. Whereas you could see in the Wayans Brothers show, he's more entrepreneurial, focused. He owns his diner. His son owns a newsstand. They're working their own businesses. And the way it's written is that is a focus or a push. They are inspired by their father owning his own diner to get their own. Marlon is an actor. How meta. But Marlon is an actor. He's going after creative, endeavors. Whereas Craig, he didn't have any known motivations. Okay? He wasn't even looking for a new job. He wasn't really, he was still dealing with the fact that he got fired on his day off nonetheless. Whereas his father, he's a dog catcher. He's like, this is an honest day's work. There's a deleted scene where he's telling Craig, like, it's an opening. You need to, come fill out an application. And Craig's like, I don't want to be no dog catcher. And that not only insults Pops, as it should have, because, look, it was good enough to take care of you, put food on the table, and you, a grown man by all intents and purposes, sitting in my face telling me you don't want to do what I do. Rude. Okay? So it's it's one of those things where, Pops was insulted, he was hit, he was hurt, and he responded accordingly. But Pops is one of those fathers who definitely needs to be on this list, because he's not only everybody's father. Like, he's not only my daddy, your daddy. He's a good representation of that balance. He raised his kids with the values and the morals and the work ethic to survive, but not allow it to bog them down or bog him down. And that's what I love about Pops. In every role, even when he was in Boomerang, he was Pops all day. And it's hilarious that he plays the same character, but not the same character. R.I.P. to him too. And we have a few honorable mentions. Okay, we have Frank Mitchell, Moesha daddy. Listen, okay. Frank was okay. I know how it is to be a mother of teen girls. So I won't say Frank was too stern, but I will say a lot of the situations, a lot of the standoffs he had with Moesha could have been avoided if he was just a little bit more understanding, a little bit more lenient, a little bit more, Bill Cosby and not Frank Mitchell. Which is funny because Bill Cosby is another honorable mention. I know with the controversy and all of that. And we're not talking Bill Cosby. We're talking Cliff Huxtable. Okay? There's a difference. Okay? Now, they had an episode on Moesha where they were the Huxtables. That was a lot. But I feel like if Frank would have took a step back a lot of the times and looked at the entire picture instead of going to 1,000 on Moesha, a lot of heartache, headache, and things could have been avoided. Because, one, I don't think Moesha was a bad child. The level of discipline Frank imparted on Moesha was depicted as she was an out of control teen, which Moesha was not by far. I've seen out of control teens, grew up with out of control teens. Moesha was not even close. So I think the writers on Moesha did a bit of a disservice or an overreach when it came to Frank. But Frank was a father through and through, although he had his faults. Dorian and before Dee came into the picture, it was very clear that Moesha stepped into that head woman of the household. So things had to be, reshaping once Dee came into the picture, because it was just her brother, and her father. And It was obvious too that there were some things that were being overlooked because it was just them three, and Frank had to work. He had to make sure his household was taken care of. And we move on to Cliff Huxtable, who was, again, that middle of the road father. He imparted values, he imparted morals. He was not as stern as Frank. He didn't come from the guise of a Carl with his police shield. And I for me, watching the show growing up and then watching as an adult, I feel like Cliff was that good balance, that good medium. Right? He did not preach all the time, and then when he did, he was reminded, hey, you were young too. Okay? So a lot of the times they would write the kids like, you're a doctor, mom's a lawyer. We have high expectations, but if you look on the flip side, the things that they were asking for as parents, it's very very basic. Do your chores, don't join a gang, don't do drugs, eat your vegetables, get good grades. I didn't see anything completely flawed with the parenting. And him as a husband, same thing. Very mid of the road, like a good balance. Of course, he had flaws and faults, but for all intents and purposes, great father figure. The Huxtables, great family. And this moves us on to our Boss Theater casting call. Now, when I did this last month, I was expecting so much more engagement. So, fellas, men, those who say we don't support, make sure you support, make sure you engage, make sure you jump in here. Okay? Because a couple of y'all was saying, like, I feel like I support, but I don't get that support back. We're going to have that discussion on Tuesday. But right now, I picked a few scenes by my Mount Rushmore of older male actors, okay? Because my younger male actors, of course, they have Michael B. Jordan on it, first and foremost. That's a conversation for another day. But the scene I have from Lawrence Fishburne is his role in Boyz n the Hood, and it's his monologue about gentrification. Now, if you've seen Boyz n the Hood, if you've seen Lawrence Fishburne playing Furious, and if you are a Lawrence Fishburne fan like me, this monologue will speak to you. And if you would like to tackle it, make sure you hit us up. Let us know. Step on the stage. We want to hear you take this monologue down. Okay? Now we move on to Mr. Samuel L. Jackson as Coach Ken Carter. Now, I love this monologue because, one, Samuel L. Jackson is playing a real life person and Coach Ken Carter. And it's the monologue where they don't win, but he still lifts them up and tells them how proud he is of them. And I feel like that was a great cap to this movie, because if you look at him throughout the movie, Mr. Coach Ken Carter was a tough guy. Okay? He was not letting up. But this made them respect him and see things from his purview and want better for themselves. And then we have Mr. Denzel Washington. I chose his monologue from Fences. If you guys have been here for a while, you know I love Fences. You know I love this play. You know I've done this monologue. I've done Viola Davis's monologue a bunch of times here. I'm standing with you, Troy. I've been right here with you. Okay? We're not gonna go. But this is not his part of that monologue, but this is his part. He's playing Troy. Let me mention that. Let me make sure I mention that. And this is the scene where he's going back and forth with his son. And this is called the Got to Like You scene. Because his son asks, why don't you like me? And Troy's response is very of the times and very fathers of the era, right? I don't gotta like you. I take care of you. So I thought that was a great monologue. I know some of y'all are like, oh, where's the monologue from Training Day? Listen. Okay. If you want to do the monologue from Training Day, hit me up with your with your video or whatever, and we'll play it. But this is the choice for this month. And last but not least, Mr. Delroy Lindo playing Woody in Crooklyn. Now, I know everybody, why you didn't choose Sinners? Listen, same reason I didn't choose the Training Day monologue. This scene, if you have not seen Crooklyn, is when Delroy Lindo character Woody is working on his music, and his wife Carolyn comes in and she's asking him, well, she's addressing the fact that he wrote another bounce check. And this dialogue ensues between them that I feel like a lot of households have either witnessed this, been in it themselves, and I feel like it's a realistic stance. And it goes to what we've been talking about this week, where men don't feel supported by the women in their lives to do creative things and be creative endeavors. And if you know the scene, you know exactly where I'm going with this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And again, if you want to do the scene from Sinners, hit me up with your video or your voicing, and I will play it. I will add it to the episode. But this is the pick for this month's Boss Theater casting call. So make sure you hit us up, and I'll even be in the scene with you, especially when it comes to Woody, Delroy Lindo, and Carolyn, because that scene deserves all of the things. Okay, so here is your assignment. Make sure you listen to Host Chat. Make sure you tap in, because we have a discussion of the sorts going on. It is Men's Month. It is Father's Month. And preparing for this month, I was receiving information that did not compute with me. And that information told me that men don't feel supported by women. I'm not going to go deep, because again, I want you to listen to the episode if you haven't already. And I want to hear from everyone on each side of it. But I especially want to hear from the men. Do you feel supported? And if not, why not? Right? And until next time, I hope everybody has a great and positive rest of their day. And please remember to vote for me in the Favorite Chef competition. And if you're an author, if you're a male book, wow. If you're a male who has written a book that has themes of fatherhood, manhood, coming of age stories for men, we still have not picked our CWP book club book for the month. So send us your book. Your book could be featured in this month's book club. And until next time, I hope everybody has a great and positive rest of their day and a great and positive rest of your week.